What's your most unethical life hack? Ever wondered how people game the system? Today I'm sharing the wildest unethical life hacks that actually work. Hit subscribe and the bell. Trust me, you don't want to miss these. Watch till the end for the craziest ones. Let's go. Story 1. At Whole Foods, it's cheaper to fill a soup container with food instead of soup than to buy the same food in regular boxes. I used to work there and I can't believe I never thought about it. Similarly, at Publix, soup is more expensive than soda, so I take 2 soda glasses, so I don't burn myself, and fill them with soup. This is a classic example of how pricing systems have strange loopholes. Story 2. I collect fast food receipts from the floor outside restaurants and scan them into apps to accumulate points. I have already received over $1,600 worth of free food from one app. When Menards has an 11% off promotion, I collect their parking lot receipts. Last year, I collected several $100s in rebates. Story 3. I'm in my 30s, and I've never been called for jury duty. I'm a little disappointed about that. A friend got his first summons when he was 40 and thought there was something wrong with him. I know an almost 60-year-old woman who has never been summoned either. Her friend was in a very famous murder trial where the defendant threatened to kill all the jurors. They were kept in a hotel every night during the 8-week trial. She developed PTSD afterwards, both from the threats and from all the evidence of the murders. So she is glad she never had to participate in such a thing. Story 4. Tired of Amazon's incorrect delivery to the neighboring apartment building. Usually the neighbor brings it in a week or two, but I don't want to wait. I make a scene with Amazon showing them the complaint records and demand an immediate reshipment. They send the new product right away, and then the neighbor brings the original one. I get double the quantity because of their mistake with no regrets. If the delivery service can't work properly, it's their problem. Story 5. I accidentally went to someone else's conference breakfast at the hotel during a break. It turned out that the food was for another conference, and ours only had coffee and muffins. Now I know that you can easily walk into any hotel looking confident, take the elevator up a few floors, go down another, and have a quiet breakfast. Hotel employees are not paid enough to check every guest. Story 6. I collect program receipts from lottery tickets and scratch-offs that people leave near scanners for points for gift cards. I scan them and earn points for gift cards. Often people leave hundreds of dollars worth of scratch-offs by the machine without knowing about the rewards program. We maximized our points every month when we bought a house and got money for Lowe's, Home Depot, and Amazon. Every little bit helped with the renovation. As they say about Menards, save big in the Menards parking lot literally became a mantra. Story 7. At self-service, I scan many products as russet potatoes or yellow onions. The cheapest items in the vegetable section, expensive organic tomatoes become potatoes, exotic fruits turn into ordinary onions. Self-service systems are designed to be honest, but no one checks whether you really scanned what you put in the bag. The key is not to be too greedy and not to scan avocados as potatoes too often in the same store. Story 8. When working remotely, I invested in a mouse jiggler. In the office, no one pays attention when you go for a coffee for 10 minutes, but God forbid if your icon turns orange. If you have a laptop, it's easier to put something on the touchpad. I put my metal-rimmed glasses on the trackpad and it keeps me in green status as long as I want. Some people deliberately put the status appears to be missing so that people get used to seeing them in orange. Story 9. Lower your car insurance. Deductible to 0 right before a snowfall or trip. After the weather or trip, raise the deductible back up. You'll only spend a few dollars for a few days of lower deductibles, and in the event of an accident through your fault, you won't pay anything out of pocket. But be careful. Insurance companies know about this and may question your claim, especially if you do it several times. Story 10. The jury will not be punished for refusing to convict the acquittal. See the history of the Protestant Reformation for the role of prosecutors in rejecting jurors' perceptions of the law, often by race, as working, the classic prohibition. Alcohol defendants were usually acquitted about 50% of the time. Conviction comes down to the community's perception of the justice of the relevant. Digital purchases are always indexed without sales tax. Remember 59901 Kalispell, Montana, web services. Physical location is not important. Digital downloads, tickets, online credits, choose tax-free. Index match credit card payment passing. Story 11. Someone dismissed our entire jury pool by mentioning jury nullification. It was the second time I was summoned. The first time I was told not to come. So it was a bit anticlimactic. The first rule of jury nullification is not to talk about jury nullification. If you really want to use it, don't mention it before the jury deliberates. Story 12. I played dumb at work so that no one asked me to do extra things. When colleagues see that you are not very smart, they are less likely to ask for help with complex projects or ask you to stay overtime. This gives you peace of mind and the ability to focus on your core responsibilities without being overwhelmed by other people's problems. A careful balance is needed. You can't look too incompetent to avoid losing your job altogether. Story 13. At the beginning of my television career, I worked at a local news station. One of the senior cameramen traveled with a reporter to the set every day. Several times a week, she would ask him to stop at different hotels where she was supposedly gathering information for stories or talking to sources. He would wait in the car for 20 minutes while she actually went in and ate free breakfast. Eventually, she was exposed and fired for stealing work time. Story 14. If your mortgage is with Wells Fargo and you call customer service, mention the words lawyer, media, or government. These are the trigger words that instantly transfer you to the highest level of service, the sixth level, which is internally called the president's office. At this level, they fully investigate your problem in a cover-your-ass style and give you a legally sound explanation. Their internal models assume that people mentioning these things can bring external attention to Wells Fargo's practices. Story 15. Intentionally breaking things at the workplace so that I could pick them up after they were thrown away and fix them for myself. It's really quite unethical, but it works. When a company throws away broken equipment that I can actually fix, why not take advantage of the opportunity? Especially when you know they're just buying new stuff instead of repairing the old. Story 16. I accidentally got to someone else's conference breakfast at the hotel during a break. It turned out that the food was for another conference and ours was just coffee and muffins. It would have been easy to do this on purpose if food was needed. My 13-year-old daughter went off on a tangent about the hotel breakfast. She was talking about the best breakfast of her life. A beautifully decorated room, friendly people, lots of peers. She wandered into a bar mitzvah and just sat down at the table. The key is not to be sneaky, but to act as if you belong there. Story 17. A friend told me about working at a call center where they monitored phone calls. To get around this, the three of them would just call each other and talk internally among themselves. The call center must have been very dumb not to detect this, but it shows how creative people can be when they are too controlled at work. Story 18. My father worked as a copy machine technician in large offices, and when the company started tracking their hours by scanning barcodes on each machine, he found an ingenious way to get around the system. He used every copy machine to make a compilation of all the barcodes in the form of a book. Now he could get the work done quickly and then simply scan this book at home, showing the system that he was working standard hours. Management never suspected a thing. Story 19. It's the same with HelloFresh and other food delivery services. I sign up for a 40% discount for the first boxes, rotate accounts, and when they send a come back promo, I switch back for the entire period. Then I repeat the cycle. Companies spend huge amounts of money on attracting new customers, so why not use this money several times? I almost never pay the full price for these services thanks to the constant new customer discounts. Story 20. At Whole Foods, it's cheaper to fill a soup container with food instead of soup than to buy the same food in regular boxes. I used to work there and I can't believe I never thought of it. To add to that, soup at Publix is more expensive than soda. I take 2 soda glasses because it's hot and fill them with soup. These pricing systems have amazing loopholes if you know how to exploit them. Story 21. I do the same with HelloFresh and other food delivery services. I sign up for a 40% discount for the first boxes, rotate accounts, and when they send a please come back promo, I switch back for the entire promotion period. Then I repeat the cycle. As a result, I almost never pay the full price for these services. constantly taking advantage of New Year discounts on different accounts. Story 22. If you work remotely, invest in a mouse jiggler. Nobody pays attention in the office when you go for a 10-minute walk to get coffee, but God forbid if your icon turns orange. If you have a laptop, it's easier to find something wired for the touchpad. I put my metal-rimmed glasses on the trackpad and it keeps me green as long as I want. Some people deliberately set their status to appears to be absent all the time so that people get used to seeing them as orange. Story 23. I accidentally avoided jury duty when I wasn't summoned the first day and no one told me not to Google the case. I was young and didn't realize that not everyone has such an ordinary name. The headline alone was enough to realize the defendant's guilt. I panicked and prayed that they would not summon me, but they did. When asked about my impartiality, I had to admit that I could not. When they found out about the Googling, they cleared the room of other jurors. 6 months later, I read about someone escaping from a police car, the same guy arrested again for the same thing. Story 24. I scan many self-service products as russet potatoes or yellow onions, the cheapest items in the vegetable section. Organic tomatoes become potatoes, exotic fruits turn into ordinary onions. The systems are designed to be honest, but no one checks the correspondence between what they scanned and what they put in the bag. The main thing is not to be too greedy and not to do it often in the same store so as not to attract the attention of the staff. Story 25. I was a juror in a kidnapping and attempted murder case, and we were escorted to the cars for the same reason. My ex-father-in-law was called to the stand, and he played a stereotypical Southern racist with a Confederate shirt. During lunch, his wife, a black South African, came in. The judge found out and exploded. This shows the absurd lengths to which people will go to avoid their civic duty, even by pretending to be disgusting. Story 26. For parking in big cities where parking meters are linked to apps, I create 2 separate accounts with different emails and switch between them so that I never move my car. So far, I haven't received any fines and regularly stretch 1 to 2 hour parking into a whole day. Most systems do not cross-reference data between different accounts. Story 27. Someone dismissed our entire jury pool by mentioning jury nullification. It was the second call, the first time they told us not to come. So it was anticlimactic. The first rule of nullification is not to talk about it before the selection. I'm doing a year-long project about it. If you want to use it, don't mention it before the jury deliberates. We raise awareness that as a juror, you don't have to follow a law you don't agree with. Story 28. My car had a strange electrical problem. The windshield wipers would turn on randomly and then the car would stall for a few minutes. One evening I hit and killed a deer. It just ran out of nowhere. I told the police and showed them the damage to the car. They organized the removal of the deer. The next day, he told the insurance company about the accident and mentioned a strange electrical problem probably caused by the deer hitting him. They covered the cost of the repair, including the evacuation to the mechanic 3 times until it was fixed. I was a poor student, so that's my excuse. Story 29. Accidentally avoided the jury not summoned on the first day. No one told him not to Google. The young man did not understand everyone's common name. The headline was enough guilt of the defendant. He panicked and prayed not to be summoned. They did. I could not admit to impartiality. Googling cleared the rest of the room. 6 months later, the police car escaped. The guy was arrested again for the same thing. Never a jury in his 30s. Disappointed. Friend 40 thought something was wrong. A 60-year-old also never. A friend of a famous murder trial the defendant threatened to kill. Hotel every night for 8 weeks. PTSD threats evidence. Counsel never participated. Story 30. Self-service. Many products scan potatoes, russet, or yellow onions are the cheapest vegetables. Organic tomatoes become potatoes. Exotic fruits become ordinary onions. The systems are designed to be honest. No one checks whether what is scanned matches what is put in. The main thing is not to be greedy, not often in one store, and not to attract the attention of the staff. I have 4 Audible accounts. First free registration books. Now I rotate activation, deactivation of the 3 months 99 cents promo. I deactivate the third credit and activate the next one for the next promotion, sometimes 2 books per credit. Every 3-4 books I return, I get a free credit. They let me do it without any questions. Story 31. I know someone who was sentenced to 7 years in prison for this very crime. He did it several times and the total amount exceeded $2,500, which made it a serious crime. He also used personal data of people from different states, which made part of it a federal crime. He was convicted at both the state and federal level. He served his actual sentence in both prisons. So yes, it is prosecuted by banks and law enforcement, but only if it is not a felony. Story 32. In the hotel, I noticed a strange thing. If you book a room and then cancel too close to the date of arrival, you're charged a fee, but there is a loophole. I call and reschedule the reservation for the future, wait a little bit, and then call again and cancel without any penalties. Now I use this trick with medical appointments as well. If I need to cancel on the day of the visit, I simply reschedule for the next week, and an hour later I cancel altogether. Story 33. For digital purchases, I always use the 59901 zip code, which is Kalispell, Montana, where there is no sales tax. When I buy online courses, ebooks, or event tickets, I simply enter this zip code as the delivery address. Amazon and other sites calculate the tax based on the delivery address even if nothing is physically shipped. I save hundreds of dollars on taxes a year. Story 34. I use several email addresses to constantly receive discounts for new customers on different sites. Applehide. My email helps a lot with this. The Gmail trick with dots and pluses also works. John Smith and John Smith are recognized by the system as different addresses, even though Google knows they are the same mailbox. Story 35. Thanks to modern tolerance, I can call the utilities on behalf of my wife. When they say they want to talk to the account holder and I introduce myself with a female name and a male voice, there is an awkward pause. But now no one can say anything, and that's right. I always thought it was absurd. It could be anyone. Story 36. Lottery ticket/scratch-off program receipts leave gift cards near the scanners for points. I scan it, earn card points, often leave hundreds of dollars in scratch-offs by the machine without knowing the rewards program. Maximize the monthly use of Lowe's, Home Depot, and Amazon when buying a house. The change helped with repairs. Save big money in Menards parking was literally a mantra. Jury selection is obvious, clipped duct, accident lawyer. Asked hands, who read the book last week is now reading? To clarify what the book, more than a dozen pages, magazine, newspaper, book definition? Yes, didn't almost everyone laugh? Only 3 others did too. The readers were rejected. Story 37. The father easily avoids the jury. The job lawyer, former judge, is instantly rejected by both sides. A legal education is automatically undesirable. Most cases lawyers want without a deep understanding. Professional knowledge of the system versus selection is ironic. Someone freed the entire pool by mentioning nullification. The second challenge to the first is not to come. It is anticlimactic. The first rule is not to speak before selection. It's a year-long project. If you want to use it, don't mention it before the discussion. We raise awareness that a juror does not have to follow a law he or she disagrees with. Story 38. Jurors cannot be punished for refusing to convict, and acquittals are not appealed because of double jeopardy. We look at the history of the Protestant Reformation, the role of prosecutors in rejecting jurors for perceived law, often because of race, and how nullification works. The classic example is the prohibition cases. Defendants for alcohol were usually acquitted by juries about 50% of the time. Conviction comes down to the community's perception of the fairness of the law. Story 39. I was summoned to court when my children were in elementary school. I called and asked if I needed to bring entertainment for the children or if there was a children's room. I was fired. This is one of the easiest ways to avoid court, to have small children and no one to leave them with. The courts understand that parents cannot just leave their children alone for an indefinite period. Story 40. At work, we are forced to attend trainings twice a year. My colleagues and I look for courses held in hotels and write to the organizers to find out if lunch is provided. If so, will it be catered or will we be allowed to eat in the hotel cafeteria? There's nothing better than eating lobsters and oysters at the company's expense under the guise of professional development. Sometimes we even find trainings in five-star hotels with incredible buffets. Story 41. I travel for work 80% of the time with a 60-40 split between flying and driving. About once a month, I need to hold a Zoom meeting while traveling. I check into any Marriott hotel, grab my work backpack, and smile at the receptionist as I walk into the lobby. I go straight to the lounge area, connect, and conduct the meeting. I have my own hotspot, so I don't need a Wi-Fi code. After the meeting, I quickly use the restroom and get back on the road. No one has ever asked if I am a hotel guest. Story 42. If you go to the Golden Corral at 3:30 p.m., you pay for lunch, but at 4 p.m., they bring out the evening meal. This is the perfect timing to maximize the value. You get access to the evening menu for the price of lunch, which can save you a few dollars and give you access to the best dishes. Works in most buffet restaurants with different menus for lunch and dinner. Story 43. The last company started tracking time, so I put a Bluetooth mouse on the Roomba because the USBs are blocked. Terrible place to work, but worked mostly mornings and evenings because of international colleagues. I had to show up 3 times a week despite a strange sleep schedule. At first, they monitored 917, checking for at least 40 hours, which I definitely worked. Later, we expanded to round-the-clock tracking and started monitoring apps. We have crazy periods at the end of the month. The rest of the time, it's quiet. I wrote an Excel macro and a code to copy libraries. Sometimes I forgot to turn it off and won productivity awards worth $500 in gifts. Story 44. I deliberately broke things at work so that I could pick them up after throwing them away, fix them, and keep them. This is quite unethical, I admit, when you know that the company will simply throw away the broken equipment instead of repairing it. Why not take advantage of the opportunity? Especially when you know a lot about technical things and can easily repair what seems hopelessly damaged to them. They were planning to throw it away anyway, so no one was technically harmed. Story 45. I was summoned to court with young elementary school children. I called and asked about entertainment for the children or a children's room. They released me. I go to the Golden Corral at 3:30 p.m., pay for lunch, but at 4 p.m., they bring out dinner. I get dinner for the price of lunch. Although stealing credit card data is illegal, they do nothing. Recently, $1,300 in fraudulent purchases in an unfamiliar state. The bank does not pursue justice and counts the fraud as a loss. I had transactions and receipts with my loyalty card, but the police said the victim was the bank, and they don't pursue. Story 46. The car had strange electricity. The wipers would turn on by themselves, then go dead in minutes. In the evening, I hit a deer out of nowhere, reported it to the police, showed them the damage, and organized its removal. The next day, I told the insurance company about the accident and the electrical problem caused by the impact. They covered repairs and evacuation 3 times until it was fixed. A poor student is my excuse. You have to do what you have to do. A deer hit is traumatic enough. He deserved a new electrical system. Story 47. I have noise-canceling headphones. I don't turn them on. They think I don't hear anything. They talk freely about confidential things. Office environments are useful. Information is power. Knowing gossip, upcoming changes, and the mood of management is a huge advantage for a career strategy. Better protection with quiet sound amplification. Tired of Amazon's incorrect delivery to the neighboring high-rise. It usually takes a week or 2. I don't want to wait. Amazon stage, complaint record, demand immediate resend. They send a new one right away, then bring the original one, double their mistake with no regrets. Story 48. It's amazingly easy to fake a utility bill to prove you live where you don't really live. This may be needed for various purposes, from getting resident discounts to enrolling children in a particular school. Of course, it's a lot of paperwork, but technically it's quite easy to do if you know how these systems work. Story 49. My management has always trusted me based on real work, not stupid metrics. but I usually just don't want random colleagues to see me coming and going. That's why I've lived in appears to be absent mode at several jobs. One boss realized this years later and told someone who was looking for me, "Send a message anyway, he's probably not absent." And I was indeed at the computer. Story 50. In my neighborhood, the building codes are extremely strict and often do not allow the complete demolition of a house for new construction. However, if you don't demolish the whole house but reconstruct it, you will get permission. That's why in the past we literally demolished everything except the fireplace and chimney and built a completely new house around them. Personally, I think this is against the spirit of the law, but I don't run the company. This is the Theseus Housing Code when only one original part remains. Story 51. My father easily avoids jury duty. When asked about his job, he says, "I'm a lawyer and a former judge," and both sides are instantly dismissed. A law degree automatically makes you undesirable for most cases because lawyers want jurors without a deep understanding of the law. Professional knowledge of the system works against you in jury selection, ironically. Story 52. I wear noise-canceling headphones, but I don't turn them on. People think I can't hear anything and talk freely about confidential things next to me. This is especially useful in office environments where information is power. Knowing the office gossip, upcoming changes, and the mood of the management gives you a huge advantage in choosing a career strategy. It's even better to have protective headphones with amplification for quiet sounds. Story 53. I used to deliberately break things at work to take them back after throwing them away and fix them for myself. It's quite unethical. I know how to fix hopelessly damaged things for them. They planned to throw it away, no one was hurt. Parking in big cities meters are linked to apps. I create 2 accounts with different emails. I never switch. I haven't received any fines. I spend 1 to 2 hours all day. The systems do not cross data between accounts, keep paying for new sessions without breaking the limit. Different payment methods for each account. Story 54. My car had a strange electrical problem. The wipers would turn on by themselves and then the car would stall. One evening I hit a deer and reported the accident to the police. The next day I told the insurance company that the electrical problem was probably caused by the deer hitting me. They covered all the costs of repairs and even evacuation 3 times until it was fixed. Story 55. I'm tired of Amazon delivering things to the wrong address, to the neighboring high-rise behind the gate. Usually this person brings me packages in a week or 2, but I don't want to wait. I throw a tantrum to Amazon showing them the records of previous complaints and demand an immediate resend instead of waiting 3 days. They send the new product right away and then my neighbor brings the original one anyway. I get double the quantity because of their mistake and feel no regret. Story 56. I work for a company with a very strict time and app tracking policy. We have a crazy 1-2 weeks at the end of the month and the rest of the time is quiet. The manager complained that the data showed a lack of app usage during the quiet weeks. I wrote a macro to copy data back and forth in Excel and code to copy code libraries between folders. Sometimes I forgot to turn it off and even won a few highest productivity awards worth $500 in gift cards. Story 57. Work as little as possible for as much money as possible. Don't let your boss know when you're finishing a task ahead of schedule, because getting things done quickly often leads to even more work. Focus on keeping your boss happy without overextending yourself. Your job is to manage your manager, underpromise and overdeliver, but not too much. It's important to work at the pace of your colleagues because the harder you work, the more you're expected to do for the same salary. Story 58. I've been working on a project about jury nullification for a year. If you want to use it, don't mention it before the discussion. We raise awareness that as a juror, you don't have to follow a law you don't agree with. Jurors cannot be punished for refusing to convict, and acquittals cannot be appealed because of double jeopardy. A classic example is the cases of the Prohibition era, when about 50% of alcohol possession charges resulted in acquittals. The jury's conviction comes down to the community's perception of the fairness of the law. Story 59. Second emails of repeat discounts to first-time customers of websites. Not proud of the discounts accumulate. Hide my email. Apple, Gmail plus points are not unique. most sites do not take into account. Google recognizes John Smith John.s. Myth one web system often does not. Allows you to multiply newbie promo codes without creating real addresses. Not sure if unethicality works great. Fast food receipts land near restaurants, scan app rewards points. Free food over $1,600 one app. Menards 11% off looking for ribeye parking. Last year, several hundred ribbits. Lottery tickets maxed out each month of house purchase. Story 60. When subpoenaed, several people openly stated racism and that race would influence the decision. Some were probably being honest, but it's strange to hear it in front of a full courtroom. Judges are aware of such attempts and do not allow them to be easily dismissed. I read the transcripts of interrogations to the end, forcing them to admit the true level of racism until most feel uncomfortable lying about it in public. Story 61. I arrive at the Golden Corral at 3:30 p.m., pay for lunch, but at 4 p.m. they bring out the dinner food. This way I get dinner for the price of lunch. Story 62. I worked for a company with strict time and app tracking. Crazy weeks at the end of the month, the rest of the time is calm. The manager complained about the lack of application usage during quiet periods. I wrote a macro to copy data to Excel and code to move code libraries. Sometimes he forgot to turn it off and won $500 worth of productivity awards. The system was so stupid that it rewarded me for automating fake activity. Story 63. A friend told me that their phone calls were monitored at their call center job. To get around this, the three of them just called each other and talked internally. The call center must have been really dumb to not detect this. But it shows the creativity of people under micromanagement. They will find ways to get around the system, even if it means creating fake activity. Story 64. Car insurance charges different amounts depending on the job title you use. There are websites that help you find cheaper alternatives for your profession. Doctors only pay €75 instead of 100 if they write GP instead of just doctor. I've seen it go down to €40 for some specialty titles. Nurses are paid 30% less if they call themselves public nurses. It's crazy how much you can save just by writing a different job title. Story 65. At the beginning of my television career, I worked at a local news station. The senior cameraman traveled with a reporter to the set every day. Several times a week, she would ask him to stop at hotels where she was allegedly gathering information for stories. He would wait for 20 minutes while she actually ate free breakfasts. Eventually, she was exposed and fired. This shows how far people are willing to go for free food, even at the risk of their careers. Story 66. For parking in big cities where meters are linked to apps, I create 2 separate accounts with different email addresses, then switch between them so that I never move my car. So far, I haven't received any fines and regularly stretch 1 to 2 hour parking into a whole day. Most systems do not cross data between different accounts, so you can continue to pay for new sessions without breaking the time limit. The main thing is to use different payment methods for each account. Story 67. For digital purchases, I always use a postal code without sales tax. I remember 59901, Kalispell, Montana. For web services where the physical location is not important, digital downloads, tickets, online loans, I choose a code without tax. But your zip code usually needs to match your credit card for the payment to go through. You can specify a different delivery address from the billing address. Amazon calculates the tax at the delivery address even if nothing is sent. Story 68. I travel for work 80% of the time with a 60-40 ratio of flights to travel. About once a month, I need to conduct Zoom while traveling. I check into any Marriott hotel, grab my work backpack, smile at the desk clerk, and go to the lobby. I connect and conduct a meeting with my own hotspot. After the meeting, I quickly use the restroom and get back on the road. No one ever asked if I was a guest. Hotel lobbies are designed for people who are waiting, so I look natural. Story 69. Work as little as possible for as much money as possible. Avoid letting your boss know when you finish a task ahead of schedule because finishing quickly often leads to more work being assigned. Focus on keeping your boss happy without overextending yourself. Your job is to manage your manager, Underpromise and overdeliver, but not too much. Don't work hard. Work at the pace of your employees. The harder you work, the more they expect for the same pay. Story 70. Use a different billing address. Amazon calculates tax on the delivery address without even sending anything. Accidentally, someone else's conference breakfast hotel break. The food is someone else's coffee muffins. Easy to intentionally need food. Daughter 13 lost hotel breakfast. Best of life beautifully decorated by friendly peers. Wandered bar mitzvah sat down table. The key is not sneaky act belong. Any hotel free cautious. You enter with a purpose, go up floors, go down another, go to breakfast. Not enough get to check. Room key card parking lot empty. No one will notice the stolen waffles. Story 71. My father easily avoids jury duty. When asked about a job, he only has to say, I'm a lawyer and a former judge, and both sides instantly reject him. A law degree automatically makes a person undesirable for most cases because lawyers want juries that don't understand the law too well. Story 72. I'm not sure if it's unethical, but it works great. I collect fast food receipts from the ground outside restaurants and scan them into reward point apps. Free food. Already received over $1,600 in free food from one app. When Menards is offering an 11% discount, I look for receipts in the parking lot. Last year, I got several $100s in ribbons that way. Lottery tickets, too. We maximized our points every month when buying a house for Lowe's, Home Depot, Amazon. Story 73. I know someone who allegedly did this. If you have a car that is worth more on paper than it really is, for example, a German car with scratches and engine problems, you can dump it somewhere remote and report it stolen. If it is not found within 2 to 4 weeks, the insurance company will pay out. This is definitely a fraud and a crime, so I don't recommend it. Story 74. I have 4 Audible accounts. First for free books for signing up. Now I constantly rotate activation and deactivation for the first 3 months for 99 cents promotion. When I get the 3rd credit, I deactivate and activate the next account for the same promotion. Sometimes there are offers of 2 books per credit. Also, every 3 to 4 books I return the one I read and get a free credit. They allow it without questions. Audiobooks can be expensive, so this saves a lot of money. Story 75. The last company started tracking time, so I put a Bluetooth mouse on the Roomba because the USBs are blocked. It was a terrible place to work. I worked mostly in the mornings and evenings because of international colleagues, slept for strange hours, but had to be in the office 3 times a week. At first, they only monitored 9/17, checking for at least 40 hours, which I definitely worked. Later, they expanded it to 24 hours and started tracking applications. I wrote an Excel macro in code that copies libraries back and forth. Sometimes I forgot to turn it off and even won several awards for highest productivity. Story 76. Really attractive blind people don't pay attention to their appearance. Although my brother says that he is so ugly that they feel it is a violation in the force, in a tolerant world, I make calls to the utility companies on behalf of my wife when she doesn't want to. They insist on talking to the account holder, and there is an awkward pause when I introduce myself with a woman's name and a man's voice. Now they can't say anything, and rightly so. I always thought it was absurd. It could be anyone. I worked for a major Canadian telecommunications company, and they told me never to dare to ask, but you can ask for verification. Story 77. When I was subpoenaed, several people openly stated that they were racist and that race would definitely influence their decisions. Some were probably being honest, but it was still strange to hear them declare this in front of a room full of people. Judges are aware of such attempts and often do not allow easy recusal. I've read transcripts where the judge interrogates them to the end, forcing them to admit how racist they really are, to the point where most people feel uncomfortable lying about it. Story 78. Nice blind people don't pay attention to how you look. Although my brother says he's so ugly that they do, they say it's a disorder in the force. Story 79. I use second emails for repeated discounts to first customers on websites. I'm not proud of it, but the discounts accumulate. I do it with hide my email on Apple. Gmail with periods and dots doesn't make a unique address, but most websites don't take this into account. Google recognizes John Smith and John Smith as one address, but web systems often do not. This allows you to multiply Novocherski promo codes without creating new real addresses. Story 80. When I have a document to submit to my boss or client, but I don't have time to finish it by the deadline, even though I could finish it in one more day, I find any DLL file on my computer and rename it to budget.xls or proposal.doc. I send it by email with the message, "Here is the document." When the recipient tries to open the file, it fails, and he writes back to me, giving me more time to complete the work. Then I send the correct file with the words, "I don't know what happened, try this one." It's a simple but effective way to buy yourself time. Story 81. I deliberately set teams to appear absent all the time so that people get used to seeing me in orange when they switch from Skype. My management has always trusted me based on actual work, not silly metrics, but usually I just don't want random coworkers to see me coming and going. One boss realized this years later by telling someone, "Send a message anyway, he's probably not absent." And I was indeed at the computer. Story 82. Every time I go to Chick-fil-A, I casually mention that this is my first time eating here, and I often get a free cookie. Employees love to do good things for new customers, and I take advantage of that feeling. Of course, I am there regularly, but at different times with different cashiers, so no one remembers. It's a small lie, but the free cookies are worth it, especially when they taste so good. Story 83. I take an extra 10 minutes every time I go to the restroom at work for a short break. Once my friends and I downloaded an app where you enter your salary and mark the time you spend in the bathroom, and it calculates how much the company paid for your trips to the bathroom. Then you connect with your friends as a social network, and it was very competitive. I forget the name of the app, but it was 10 years ago. Companies pay for our biological needs, why not use it for short breaks? Story 84. Car insurance charges different amounts depending on the job title you use. There are websites for your country that help with this. You just enter the job title and they show you cheaper alternatives. For doctors using €100 as a base, insurance costs only €75 if you just write GP instead of doctor. I've seen it go as low as €40 for some specialty titles. Nurses pay 30% less if they call themselves public nurses instead of just nurse. It's crazy how much you can save just by writing a different job title. I found one site where it was cheaper to say cook instead of unemployed, and pensioner was the cheapest option. Story 85. Although stealing credit card information is illegal, nothing is actually done about it. I recently had $1,300 worth of fraudulent purchases in a state I've never been to. The bank said they don't pursue justice and count fraud as a loss. I had all the transactions and digital receipts for 2 purchases because my loyalty card was used. The police said that technically the bank is the victim, and since they are not pursuing justice, they will not do anything. This almost made me start stealing card data. Story 86. You can walk into any hotel and get a free breakfast if you're careful. You enter with a purpose, go up a few floors, take another elevator, and go to breakfast. Employees don't get paid enough to check. Unless the room needs a key card or the parking lot is empty, no one will notice the stolen waffles. Early television career, the cameraman waited in the car while the reporter gathered information in hotels several times a week. In fact, she ate free breakfast for 20 minutes. Eventually, she was exposed and fired. Story 87. I collect program receipts from lottery tickets and scratch-offs that people leave near scanners. I scan them and earn points for gift cards. Often people leave hundreds of dollars worth of scratch-offs near the machine. We maxed out our points every month when we bought a house and got money for Lowe's, Home Depot, and Amazon. Every little bit helped with the repairs. Story 88. I lower my car insurance deductibles to $0 right before a snowfall or trip. After the weather or trip, I raise the deductible back up. I spend only a few dollars for a few days of lower deductibles, and in the event of an accident, I pay nothing out of pocket. Be careful with this. Insurance companies know about it and will absolutely question your claim, if not reject it completely, especially if you do it several times. Story 89. Every time I go to Chick-fil-A, I casually mention that this is the first time I've eaten here and often get a free cookie. The staff loves to do good things for new customers, and I play on that feeling. Of course, I'm there quite regularly, but always at different times and with different cashiers, so no one remembers me. It's a small lie, but the free cookies are worth it. Story 90. My 13-year-old daughter accidentally wandered into a bar mitzvah instead of a hotel breakfast. She sat down at a table with strangers and ate, telling me later how it was the best breakfast of her life. Everyone was so friendly, even though there was no bacon. I realized that the main thing is to act as if you are supposed to be there. Story 91. I pretend to be stupid at work so that no one asks me to do extra things. When colleagues see that you are not very smart, they are less likely to ask for help with complex projects or ask you to stay past the hour. This gives me peace of mind and the ability to focus on my core responsibilities without being overwhelmed by other people's problems. Of course, this requires a careful balance. You can't look too incompetent. Story 92. Amazon constantly delivers my orders to the wrong address, to the neighbor's house behind the gate. Usually the neighbor brings it in a week or two, but I don't want to wait. So I call Amazon, yell at them about their constant mistakes, and demand an immediate resend. Then my neighbor brings the original order anyway, and I get two things instead of one. Story 93. When I have a document from my boss, client, or colleague, but I don't have time to finish it by the deadline, even though I could finish it in one more day, I find the DLL file on my computer and rename it to budget.xls or proposal.doc. I send it with the message, "Here is the file." When the recipient can't open it, he writes back, giving me time to finish. Then I send the correct file with the words, "I don't know what happened, try this one." This buys a valuable extra day without undermining trust. Story 94. When I was summoned to court and I had small children, I simply asked if I needed to bring entertainment for them or if there was a children's room. I was immediately dismissed from the jury. Story 95. District building codes are strict, rarely allowing complete demolition for a new building, but reconstruction gets a permit. We demolish everything except the fireplace and chimney and build a new one around it. It's against the spirit of the law, but I don't run a company. Theseus Housing Code. My mother's 1950s cabin for Grandpa's $50 is being reconstructed. Too close to the lake by modern standards, but grandfathered in. He can reconstruct it as long as the front wall remains. Otherwise, he has to move it back, dig a hill, a retaining wall, and move the garage. Story 96. I bring lunch to work 99% of the time because it's better to save money than to overpay for one meal. On the rare occasions when I eat out, I search the internet for local 2-for-1 or BOGO deals. When I find one, say, at Chick-fil-A, I announce to everyone that I'm going there and ask if anyone wants to order something. Inevitably, there is someone who asks me to bring lunch. They give me money, I order their food, get mine for free or at a discount, come back and give them the rest. It's a little sneaky that I don't tell them how I benefit from this, but technically they get a free delivery of the food they want. Story 97. I wear noise-canceling headphones, but I don't turn them on. People think I can't hear anything and talk freely about confidential things next to me. This is especially useful in office environments where information is power. It would be even better to have protective headphones with a quiet sound amplification function to listen to music and hear everything around me at the same time. Story 98. I bring my own lunch to work about 99% of the time because it's better to save money than to overpay for one meal. On the rare occasions when I eat out, I search the internet for local 2-for-1 deals or something free or discounted. When I find one at Chick-fil-A, I announce to everyone that I'm going there and ask if anyone wants to order something. Inevitably, someone will ask me to bring lunch. I order their food, get mine for free, come back and give them the change. It's a little sneaky that I don't tell them how I benefit from this, but technically they get what they paid for plus free delivery. This is brilliant entrepreneurship. Story 99. At work, my company started tracking time, so I put a Bluetooth mouse on the Roomba because the USBs are blocked. I worked mostly in the mornings and evenings because of international colleagues, but I had to be in the office 3 times a week. Later, he wrote a macro to copy data back and forth in Excel and even won several awards for highest productivity receiving $500 in gift cards. Story 100. I accidentally avoided jury duty when at the end of the first day I hadn't been called in yet and no one told me not to Google the case. I was young and inexperienced. I didn't realize that not everyone has a name as common as mine. One headline was enough to realize that the defendant was guilty. I panicked and prayed to the jury gods that I would not be summoned. But I was summoned. When they asked if I could serve impartially, I had to admit that I could not. When they found out that I had Googled the defendant, they cleared the room to avoid influencing the other jurors. 6 months later, I read an article about someone who had escaped from a police car. It was the same guy arrested again for the same thing. Story 101. I have 4 different Audible accounts. At first, I got free books for signing up for each account, but now I keep rotating activation and deactivation for the first 3 months 99 cents promotion. As soon as I get the 3rd credit, I deactivate this account and activate another one on the same promotion. Sometimes there are offers to get 2 books for 1 credit. Also, every 3 to 4 books, I return the book I've read and get a free credit because they allow it. Story 102. In our neighborhood, building codes are very strict, and they rarely give permission to completely demolish a house to build a new one. But if you don't demolish the whole house but reconstruct it, you can get permission. So we literally demolish everything except the fireplace and chimney, and then build a completely new house around them. Technically, it is a reconstruction, but in fact, it is a completely new house. I think this is against the spirit of the law, but who am I to judge? I'm not the one running the company, and the clients are getting their dream home. Story 103. I carefully replaced the racks, rewired, insulated, poured the slab, new trusses without demolishing the walls. Insulation, cardboard, magazines, newspapers, northern Wisconsin. I bring lunch 99% of the time, saving money instead of overpaying for one meal. I rarely eat out, so I look for 2-for-1 or BOGO deals. When I find a Chick-fil-A, I announce my trip to everyone and ask for orders. Someone asks for lunch, gives me money, I order theirs, get it for free, and return the change. I don't sneakily tell them about the benefits, but technically they get free delivery of what they want. Brilliant entrepreneurship. Story 104. It's cheaper for Whole Foods to fill a soup container with food instead of soup than regular boxes. Having worked there, I can't believe I didn't think of it. Public soup is more expensive than soda. I take 2 glasses, hot, of soup. In Wells Fargo, mention lawyer/media/government for the highest service. Trigger words take you to the 6th level, President's office. Fully explore the cover your ass style, a legally sound explanation. Internal models involve external attention to Wells Fargo's practices. Story 105. Someone bought a watch for $15,000 with my card. I caught him before delivery, got the address, called the police with the information. I asked about the arrest upon delivery. They told me to notify the bank and not to do anything. Someone somewhere wears a $15K watch without consequences. I know someone with 7 years in prison for this. He made more than $2,500 several times, making it a felony. He used people from different states, making it a federal offense. Convicted by state and federal, currently in both prisons. Prosecuted, but only if not felony level. Story 106. It's surprisingly easy to fake a utility bill to prove you live where you don't really live. This can be useful for getting resident tuition discounts, enrolling children in a particular school, or qualifying for local programs. Of course, this is document fraud, but technically quite easy to do with the right software and knowledge of what real bills look like. Story 107. HelloFresh other food delivery services are the same way. I register for a 40% discount for the first boxes, rotate accounts, come back promo switches back for the entire period. I repeat the cycle. Companies spend huge amounts of money to attract new customers, so why not use it several times? Almost never the full price thanks to regular newbie discounts. I remember Chick-fil-A every time I eat here for the first time, often with free cookies. Employees like to do good deeds to newcomers. I use their feelings. Regularly, but at different times with different cashiers, no one remembers. A small lie, the cookies are worth it. Story 108. I was once summoned to jury duty, and a judge friend told me a stupidly defensive way to get out of it. I have to say that I have a deep respect for law enforcement officers, and if they arrest someone, then the person has definitely done something. Even without evidence, I believe that innocent people are not arrested. Both sides immediately reject such jurors, and you get home by lunchtime. Lawyers do not want biased people on the jury. Story 109. I take an extra 10 minutes every time I go to the restroom at work to get some rest. My friends once downloaded an app where you enter your salary and mark the time you spend in the bathroom, and it calculates how much the company paid for your trips. It was very competitive between us. Story 110. During a conversation in the jury room, the lawyer asked how many of us had read a book last week. I asked him to clarify what was considered a book. He said anything over a dozen pages. Then I asked him if a magazine or newspaper was considered a book by his definition. He said yes. I laughed a little because doesn't everyone read something like that? He raised his hand, but only 3 others did too. All the readers were rejected. While standing in line to receive compensation, another reader came up and said, I pay for our legal system. Story 111. I travel for work 80% of the time, 60-40 flights or travel. Once a month I use Zoom while traveling. I check into the Marriott, my work backpack, smile at the desk clerk, and go to the lobby. I conduct a meeting with my own hotspot. After a quick restroom, it's back on the road. No one asked if I was a guest. The lobby is for waiting people. I look natural. I play the fool of work. No one asks for extra things. They see not smart. Less often I am asked for complex projects or overtime. Calmness, focusing on core responsibilities without being overwhelmed by other people's problems. A careful balance, not being too incompetent to lose your job. Story 112. I'm in my 30s and have never been called for jury duty. I'm a little disappointed. A friend got his first summons at 40 and thought there was something wrong with him. I know an almost 60-year-old person who has never been summoned either. Her friend was in a famous murder trial where the defendant threatened to kill the jury. They were kept in a hotel every night for 8 weeks. She developed PTSD from the threats and the evidence, so I'm glad I never had to participate in that. Story 113. I never did it, but I know someone who claims to have done it. This is extremely unethical. If you have a car that is worth more on paper than it is in reality, like a German car with scratches and engine problems, you take it somewhere remote in the city or to a parking lot. Report the theft. If the car is not found within 2 to 4 weeks, the insurance pays out. If you have rental coverage, you do not lose access to the car. Usually they restore the car eventually, but after sending a check, the claim is closed. This is definitely fraud and a serious crime. Story 114. My mom's cabin was built in the 1950s for $50 by her grandfather, and now she is remodeling it. The cabin is too close to the lake according to modern standards, but it has grandfathered rights. Mom can do any reconstruction she wants as long as the front wall stays in place. If it were to be demolished, she would have to move the entire cabin back, dig a hill, and put up a retaining wall, plus move the garage. So she very carefully replaced all the posts, rewired the electricity, insulated everything, poured a new foundation slab, and put up new trusses without tearing down a single wall. The insulation was made of cardboard, old magazines, and newspapers. That's northern Wisconsin for you. Story 115. Someone used my card to buy a $15,000 watch. I caught it before delivery, contacted the carrier, and got the delivery address. I called the local police, filed a report, gave them the information about the watch and the name and address. I asked if they would meet the courier and arrest the thief. They told me to make sure I notified the bank, which I did, and then they said they wouldn't do anything. So somewhere there is a guy with a $15,000 watch with no consequences. The justice system simply doesn't work for such petty crimes. Story 116. My ex-father-in-law was summoned to court and played a stereotypical Southern racist with a Confederate shirt trying to avoid service. During lunch, his wife, a black South African, came in. The judge found out about this and exploded in rage. This shows how far people are willing to go to avoid their civic duty, even by pretending to do something disgusting. Story 117. His television career began at a local news station. The senior cameraman was filming with a reporter every day. Several times a week, she asked me to stay at a hotel, allegedly to gather information for a story. I would wait 20 minutes. She would eat free breakfast. She was exposed and fired. She traveled long distances for free food, risking her career. Company strict time application tracking. Crazy weeks at the end of the month, the rest is calm. Manager complained underutilization of quiet periods, Excel macro, code to copy libraries, forgot to turn it off, won a $500 productivity award. The stupid system rewarded automation of fake activity. Story 118. Really good blind people don't pay attention to how you look. Although my brother says he's so ugly that they feel it. As if they feel a disturbance in the force. In our world, which accepts everyone, I made many calls to the utilities on behalf of my wife when she did not want to call. They always insist on talking to the account holder, and there is an awkward pause when I say that I am the owner with a female name and a male voice. Now they can't say anything, and rightly so. I always thought it was absurd. It could be anyone. Story 119. I still collect lottery tickets and scratch-offs that people leave near scanners. I scan them and earn points for gift cards. People often leave hundreds of dollars worth of scratch-offs near the machine. We maximized our points every month when we bought a house and got money for Lowe's, Home Depot, and Amazon. As they say about Menards, save big money in the Menards parking lot. Story 120. I take an extra 10 minutes every time I go to the restroom for a break. My friends downloaded a paycheck and bathroom time app that calculates how much the company pays for trips. You unite as a social network. It's very competitive. I forget the name, but it's decades ago. I've never done it, but I know someone whose car is worth more on paper than it is in reality. A German car with scratches and problems. You take it remotely, report it stolen. If they don't find it for 2 to 4 weeks, the insurance pays. Rental coverage means you don't lose access. Usually it is restored, but the check is sent, the claim is closed, definitely fraud and felony. Story 121. I have a document from my boss that I don't have time to prepare by the deadline, but I could do it in a day. I find the DLL file, rename it budget.xls or proposal.doc, and send it to the client. It doesn't open, writes back, and I buy time. I send the correct, I don't know what happened, try this one. A valuable extra day without undermining trust. Trainings twice a year, we look for courses in hotels, write to the organizers about lunch, hotel buffet instead of catering, lobsters and oysters at the company's expense. Sometimes luxury hotels have incredible buffets. Professional development has never tasted better. Story 122. During jury selection for an apparent hit-and-run accident, the lawyer asked, "By a show of hands, who among you read a book last week or is reading one now?" He asked to clarify what was considered a book. I said anything over a dozen pages. I asked if a magazine or newspaper was considered a book by his definition. He said yes. I laughed a little because isn't almost everyone? He raised his hand, but only 3 others did too. All the book readers were rejected. Standing behind the compensation, another guy came up and said, "I'm paying for our legal system." We really are. Story 123. Someone used my credit card to make $1,300 worth of purchases in a state I had never been to. The bank said they don't prosecute criminals because they take fraud into account in their losses. The police aren't doing anything either, saying the bank is the victim. It almost made me start stealing credit data. It was so outrageous. Story 124. Remote work. Invest in a mouse jigger. The office doesn't pay attention to a 10-minute coffee break, but God forbid an orange icon. A simpler laptop is something with a touchpad. The metal glasses on the trackpad stay green as long as needed. Some people always set it to seems to be missing and get used to orange. The management trusted the actual work, not the metrics, but I don't want to see my colleagues coming and going. I lived with seems absent for several jobs. The boss realized and told someone, "Send it anyway, it's probably not missing." I was at the computer. Story 125. I worked for one of the largest telecommunications companies in Canada, and we were told never to dare to ask anyone, but you can ask verification questions. This shows how companies are adapting to the changes in society regarding gender identity, even if it creates opportunities for people who are just trying to help their partners to abuse the system. Story 126. A homeless man I knew told me his cunning way of getting free food. He emptied a can of dog food, washed it thoroughly, and filled it with stewed beef. Sitting outside the grocery store with this can, he would ask for money or food. When people saw him eating out of a pet food can, they immediately felt sorry for him and brought him real food. However, nowadays dog food is more expensive than canned food, so this trick has lost its relevance. Story 127. Don't work hard, work at the pace of your employees. The harder you work, the more they expect for the same salary. I agree with this. It sounds like terrible advice, but you'll end up dragging everyone else down and earning less or the same, most likely. The system rewards mediocrity and punishes excellence, so it's better to stay in the middle and save your energy for the things that really matter. Story 128. It's easy to forge a utility bill to prove you don't live there. Lower the car insurance deductible to 0 before a snowfall trip. Afterwards, raise it back up. A few dollars for a few days, an accident, you pay nothing. Be careful. The companies know they will question the claim, especially several times. Auto insurance, different amounts depending on the job title. Websites help you find cheaper alternatives. Doctors, €75 instead of 100 for GP. Saw €40 for specialty titles. Nurses 30% less than public nurses. Insane savings is another name. Story 129. Work makes us go through trainings twice a year. My colleagues and I look for courses in hotels and write to the organizers to find out about lunch. If it's a hotel buffet, not catering, there's nothing better than eating lobsters and oysters at the company's expense. Sometimes we even find seminars in luxury hotels with incredible buffets. Professional development has never tasted so good, especially when the company pays for everything. Story 130. A jury kidnapping attempted murder followed a car for that reason. The ex-father-in-law summoned to court played the stereotypical Southern racist Confederate shirt. Lunchwife is a black South African. The judge found out exploded. Absurd lengths to avoid civic duty by pretending to be disgusting. Called several outright stated racism race will affect the decision, probably on a surprisingly heard by a full courtroom. Judges' no attempts do not allow easy dismissal. Transcripts of the interrogations end up forcing the true level, while most are uncomfortable lying in public. Story 131. A friend. A call center tracked the calls. 3 people were calling each other, talking internally. The center did not detect a stupid one. Do the minimum for the maximum amount of money. Avoid informing your boss about early completion. Speed leads to more work. Focus on pleasure without overexertion. The job is to manage the manager. Do not underpromise. Do not overpromise. Don't work hard. Pace your colleagues. The harder you work, the more you are expected to pay. It sounds terrible, but you pull others along, earning less. Story 132. I pretend to have hearing problems at work, although in fact I hear everything perfectly. My colleagues feel comfortable whispering gossip and office secrets next to me. Thanks to this, I know absolutely everything that is happening in the company, who will be promoted, what projects will be closed, even who is meeting with whom. Information is power, especially when everyone thinks you can't hear it.